Hi grade 8s, welcome to your Wednesday math lesson. In our last lesson, we were talking about pattern rules. So if you had an input number, so an in number, and an out number, there was a rule that you needed to do to that in number to get to the out number. So in this case, if my in number was 3 and my out number was 5, I needed to figure out what the rule was. In this case, it was to get to 5 from 3 is I need to add 2. So in this case, today we're going to continue working on pattern rules, except this time it will not be a chart with an input and an output number, or an in and out number. It will be just a list of numbers or a line of numbers. So I'll show you what I mean. So let's say the pattern starts at 15. The next number is 18, and after that is 21, and 24, and then 27. So let's say you have a line of numbers like that. I need to figure out what the next 3 numbers are. So next 3 numbers. So I need to figure out what the rule of this pattern is. The easiest way to do so is take 2 numbers that are right beside each other, like 15 and 18. I know it's going up because the number is going up each time. So what I'm going to do is I know I'm going to have to add numbers, so add something each time. I need to figure out how much I have to add by. Easiest way to do it is take my bigger number 18 and subtract 15, my smaller number, and figure out what the difference between the 2 numbers is. So 18 minus 15 is 3. So the difference is that to get from 15 to 18, I have to add 3. I need to double check that this works every single time. I don't have to check it with every single pair of numbers. The easiest way to do it is basically just choose another pair of numbers with 2 numbers right beside each other, like 27 and 24, and do the same thing that you did here, but you're just double checking that you got the same answer. So let's see. 27 and 24, what I do is I take 27, my bigger number, minus 24, and that gives me 3. So to get from 24 to 27 is I added 3. So this is how you kind of figure out the pattern rules, is you look at your string of numbers and you figure out what it's going up by or what it's going down by each time. And that gives you the pattern rule. So first of all, we need to figure out the next 3 numbers. So let's do that. The next 3 numbers, I know it's going up by 3. So basically I just take this number and I add 3 to it to get this number here. Let's just do it in a different color. So 27 plus 3 equals 30. So my next number is 30. So that's my first number. Now to 30, I add 3 again, because it's going up by 3 each time. So plus 3, 30 plus 3 equals 33. So my next number is 33. And to get the last one, I add 3 to 33 again. So 33 plus 3 equals 36. So my last number is 36. Okay? You need to remember that whenever you're doing this, you add it to the previous number. So I got 33, I need to add 3 to 33. Because if I just add it to 30, or if I just add it to 27, it's going to give me the wrong answer. So you have to take each number that came before and add to that one, instead of using the original number that you were working with. So you're going in order. And that would be how you figure out the next 3 numbers, is you're applying that rule of the pattern, which is adding 3 to it, to each previous number. So your first number, so 15, I add 3 to it, 18, so I get 18, 18 I add 3 to it, so I get 21, 21, I add 3 to it, so I get 24. 24, I add 3 to it, so I get 27, and so on. And that would give you the next 3 numbers if you're applying that rule over and over again. The next part is, what is the pattern rule, or what can you tell me about the pattern? So I'm just going to write it as pattern rule. Usually on a sheet, it'll either be saying, what is the pattern rule, or what can you tell me about the pattern, something like that. The way to write a pattern rule, or the way to answer the question when it asks to give you what the pattern is first write down what number the pattern started with. So what was the first number in this pattern? So the first number is 15. So I write for the pattern rule, start at 15, because I started at 15 with this pattern. Okay? And then, comma, and, she doesn't need a comma there. Start at 15 and add. This is where I tell you how many times or how much I add to each number. And add 3 each time. So I have to write 3 each time. So I have to remember to include each time, because I don't just add 3 once, I'm adding it to each number to get the next number. So that's where it's important. So your first part of this rule is, what number do you start at? So this is the first part. What number do you start at? And then, what do you do to this number? So in this case, I add 3 each time. So first part is start at 15. So what number do you start at? Number 2 is, what do you do to it? How much do you add? How much do you subtract? And then the last part is each time. You have to remember to include each time, because if you are indeed adding 3 each time, or if you are subtracting 5 each time, you have to remember to include that part. Let's do one more example, and this one's going to be a little trickier because it's going to be, I'm going to do subtraction 1. So we're going to have our string of numbers, and we're going to figure out how is this pattern changing, and we're writing the next 3 numbers and a pattern rule. Okay. So the 3 numbers, or sorry, the pattern is 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, and then 1. So first part is the next 3 numbers. And then this part here is going to be called the pattern rule, or what can you tell me about the pattern? Something like that. So first of all, we need to figure out what the next 3 numbers are. In order to do that, I need to know what the pattern rule is. So what's the difference between 45 and 40? The number is going down, so I know I have to subtract. How much do I subtract by? This one's easy. I just take 45, my bigger number, minus 40, my smaller number. That gives me 5. So you get from 45 to 40, I minus 5. 40 to 35, this is how I double check. How do I get from 40 to 35? I do the same thing. 40 minus 35 equals 5. So to get from 40 to 35, I minus 5. So when you are checking to see what the pattern rule is, make sure you check twice. Because if you only check it between 2 numbers and that's it, and you just say, oh, it just subtracted by 5, that's all I have to do, it might work now, but when the patterns get a little bit more complicated, as we're going to get into a little bit later, That might not always work. You might notice that the pattern doesn't always change by the same amount each time because it might be multiplication or it might be division. So that's why you should always check twice, and also you're double checking to make sure that it is in fact going by the same amount each time, because sometimes you can miscount and you think, oh, it's going down by 4, but then you check again and oh wait, it went down by 5. I need to check one of those again because it can't be changing every time. So you check twice. So I know that it decreases by 5, or so I subtract from 5 each time. To get the next two numbers, I start at my last number, 25, and I minus 5. 25 minus 5 gives me 20. So my first number that I write down is 20. Then I do 20 minus 5, which gives me 15. So the next number is 15. And 15 minus 5 gives me 10. So my next two numbers are 20, 15, and 10. I took this number, subtracted 5 to get this number minus 5 gives me this number. So those are my next three numbers. Next part is writing out my pattern rule. Pattern rule is the first part. What number did I start at? I started at 45. So start at 45. So first part of that pattern rule is what number did you start at? Start at 45. Then subtract, because we had to subtract to get the next number. And then how much did I subtract by? 5. Then subtract 5 each time. So what number do you start at? Then how much does it change by? So do I add by 5? Do I add 5? Do I subtract 5? Do I add 10? Do I subtract 10? Then subtract 5 each time, because I'm doing it to each number in the pattern. So that is our pattern rules for today. So it's not going to look the same. It doesn't have that chart. It's just going to be a row of numbers, and you need to figure out what the pattern rule is. You are going to have a sheet that will have a very similar look to this, where basically you have a string of numbers. It'll say ... It'll ask for the next 3 numbers or next 5 numbers in the pattern, and then write out what the pattern rule is. I think it's written as what can you tell me about the pattern, or something like that. I usually just call it pattern rule because that's the rule of the pattern. In order to get the next number, I have to apply a certain rule each time. But it might be worded a little bit differently on the sheet. But that's it. So that is your Wednesday math lesson. Friday, we're going to get into our next step of it, which is going to be patterns that are maybe a little bit more complex, or just a little bit different. So right now we're kind of starting out with a string of numbers and you have to find out the pattern. It can be hard to do at first because I know a lot of people have trouble with it. We're going to get some more practice on that, and then we're also going to try applying some more complex rules. But that's about it. All right. Thank you guys so much, and remember, email me if you have any questions, and I'll see you on Friday.